Okay, we're going to get started. Good afternoon. I almost said this good morning, so you know that my brain cells are limited at this point in the day. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get underway. Our session today is impacts of recent U.S. policy changes, and thank you for joining us. And when I talk about the impact of policy changes, I should say perhaps shifting, evolving changes. It does seem to be a bit of a moving target, but we will try to assess where we are and how we can deal with these things. I'm Lori Carlin. I'll be moderating today's session. Joining me today is Brian Gray from the University of Cincinnati Libraries, Allison Belan from Duke University Press, and Melissa Jr. from American Society of Microbiology. And they'll all tell you a bit more about themselves as they come up to the podium to speak. Just the Charleston Code of Conduct, which you've probably seen throughout the day, just a reminder. And we want to make sure that the session is as accessible as possible to all. So please, all of us will be using mics as we're talking, and if you do have any Q&As at the end from the audience, Linda, I believe, is running mic for us, and she will bring that to you so that everybody can hear your question. So as I mentioned, I'm Lori Carlin. A bit about me before I turn over to our panel. First, I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Delta Think, and we're a scholarly communications consulting firm focused on developing strategic solutions for our clients. And as part of that work that we do, we're also very big proponents of collecting evidence to inform strategies and those strategic solutions. So to that end, given that what we're seeing earlier this year in terms of potential research funding cuts and policy changes and the potential impact on our industry and on the researchers that we provide services to, we decided to launch a global survey to capture perspectives and perceptions of researchers on these impacts in a way that could help organizations who support these researchers and the research publishing ecosystem so that they could effectively plan for the impact of these potential funding challenges. And I'm very happy to say that 27 organizations participated in the survey in the spring. And what I mean by participation is that these organizations sent out emails to their constituencies with a link to take the survey. And we were very pleased with the response rate. We had over 13,000 researchers worldwide who participated in the survey across 135 countries and 6 different disciplines. And really very good response that allowed us to analyze and bring forth important findings to help organizations plan for the future. So the survey covered questions around publishing outputs, peer review, OA publishing, conference attendance, and what organizations might do to help support their researchers. And I'll share just a couple of top highlights or insights of interest before I turn over to the panel. The first one I'll mention is that 50% of the more than 5,000 international researchers who responded to the survey indicated that selecting a non-USA journal would now be something of importance to them when they're making their submission decisions. And you could see some of the comments supporting their position up on the slide as well. And then another concerning insight, 62% of US authors said they expect to publish fewer articles in the next 1 to 2 years as a result of policy changes. And again, a few sobering comments on the slide. The top one in particular, searching for quick turnaround and low-cost journals to quickly submit research and hope for publication before the door closes. So this is some of the insights that we were gaining from these folks. I'll mention too that we're conducting the survey again now 6 months later to compare results and see if there have been any changes and established trends. I'm happy to say that we have more than 30 organizations participating in this go-around, and still others are joining in at this time. So we're very interested to see what the data will tell us when we analyze and compare this second round. So with that, we want to hear from our speakers, which includes a library working closely with researchers in a university environment, along with representatives from 2 of the organizations that participated in the survey, to share with us what they are all seeing and how their organizations may be addressing these challenges. So thank you all, and I will start with Brian.
Good afternoon. I am the Associate Dean of Collections at the University of Cincinnati, and I'm actually just 2 weeks past a year there. My role there is over all the collection strategies, the collection budget. I oversee 3 of the 9 libraries, and also I see a lot of the internal support roles such as preservation, technical services, and our digitization unit. My perspective on these slides will also, and talk will also come from a couple other roles I have, which is also I am on the collection committee for OhioLink, which is the State of Ohio Academic Library Consortium. It's over 80 institutions, over 100 libraries. Budget is often a conversation point at our monthly meetings of that, where we go around the room and share. And I'm also on several library advisory boards for vendors or publishers, and every one of those meetings almost always has, let's go around the room and see what's happening now conversation. So, I mean, I won't call it specific institutions, but some of the comments I'll make here are things I've learned across other institutions. I don't have a lot of hard data because, for a few reasons that I'll discuss here in a second. I want to give you a little bit of context on how hard or how important the research funding is to institutions in terms of scale and what the results could be as these cuts continue. University of Cincinnati is a very large university. We had over 53,000 students this year. We were protected a little bit in the budget cut area compared to colleagues of similar institutions and state. It was the 5th or 6th year in a row of record enrollment. So we've actually bucked some trends that are going on. So some of my comments today will be from other institutions rather than my own. But you can see it's 400 degrees, and we also have heavy industrial partnerships. University of Cincinnati was actually the creator of co-op education, which started off in the sciences where you alternate between a semester of classes, you go work in the field on a salary for a semester, you come back and you alternate. So when you graduate after a 5-year degree, you have a full year of professional experience. And Cincinnati's expanded that across a lot of their disciplines. So we've also been sheltered from some of these federal situations because of our industrial partnerships. The effects of the university on the region, and if we keep getting hits with though, will be some of the regional impacts. So the university alone has over almost 11 billion regional impact in the state of Ohio, and nearing 23 billion in the state. So a lot of influence. We're the 2nd largest institution in Ohio behind the Ohio State University. Endowments pushing almost $2 billion, and our operating expenses is almost $2 billion. So you can see how critical federal funding is when you're talking numbers like that. To show you the reliance we have on federal funding, I pulled these more recent numbers. We had over 1,200 awards in fiscal year 2024, over $377 million. And it's not just affecting research. So about 3/4 of that goes to research, but in an indirect way, and the different kinds of support that comes out of research, almost 15% of that is going directly to student support as well. So it's not all just affecting laboratory work or publications, things along those lines. It has direct influence on students as well. And of the money coming into the university, 72% of that is federal funding, where almost 20% is coming from our industry partners. So we do have a little cushion with the industry partners, but they're also taking hits from some of these federal decisions. And you can see our expenditures towards research, almost $400 million of that annually is coming from our federal. In terms of the library, we have over 9 libraries, and then we have 3 jurisdictions, which is law, and our 2 branch campuses, so we actually have 12. And our total budget is over $20 million, and the area that would be affected by cuts is largely the collections, which is nearing $12 million. Also, we're sheltered a little bit in that we're a member of OhioLink, which as I said earlier, is over 80 institutions, over 100 research databases, 240,000 ebooks. So this is a large amount of our research collection. So if we do take local cuts, we're sheltered a bit because the state does this together as a group. So here's sort of my perspective on when we look at these policies, because you can't just pull out budget cuts. This is sort of within the library, the leadership, the managers in the library, how we look at some of the situation. It's a combination of budget, the enrollment of the university, how it trickles down to collection development or things we're doing within collections, how it's affecting other areas of research that we're supporting, like research data management or things we're doing in our digital repository. And then we also have to consider the influences of our state government, for example. So, and what they're doing as a result of some of the federal changes. So it's in some ways can be magnified depending on your state environment. In almost every conversation I've had with colleagues around the state and advisories, they're all seeing the federal money down, there's no doubt. But what I did discover as I tried to prepare for this presentation is what these federal cuts and policies are doing is restricting everyone's transparency. So universities and libraries are pulling down numbers fast. So if there's not a law or policy saying they have to have some of these numbers up on their websites, they're disappearing. And if they're still up on their websites, they're from a few years ago. So they're hunkering down to not draw attention to themselves. So it is really hard to come up with specific numbers unless you survey people directly. To give an example of how it's affecting libraries, the largest area is collections. And then secondary often is the library or staff professional development. So I am on a library advisory board that I think it has 12 members, and we went around the room. 10 had taken cuts, anywhere from a few percent to one was nearing 25% cut. They were at an institution that's been directly targeted by the federal government, though. Only 2 were flat or inflation increased budgets, but nothing beyond inflation. So it's pretty drastic to the point that even one person was at the advisory board on vacation because they weren't even allowed to travel representing their institution anymore because of the severe cuts. We're also hearing from the vendors and publishers, all the federal agencies that are now making collection cuts. I have not seen those working out into our agreements locally yet or our renewals, but I don't know what a few years of this might mean if this continues, because at some point people are going to need to make up the money somewhere, and if we're keeping the content and the federal agencies are cutting it, are we going to see that in price increase? So it's not clear yet. It's something I am keeping in mind, and I'm reminding the selectors that, while we did not take a cut this year, the university's already told us we don't know about next year, and then if this plays out, we might also see a price increase to come on top of that. To mix in with this, we're in the academic world, we've all been preparing for the enrollment cliff already, the drop in enrollment that we're all expecting. So I went and looked at some numbers just to see where that is, because we're also hearing these policies are affecting what states people enroll in. And if the states are magnifying some of the federal decisions, it's affecting. So in Ohio, for example, our enrollment was down 11%. And then our neighboring states was down 7%, and there was a couple of them that were down 24%. In the Midwest. So it was pretty drastic. We also have the added expense or students not enrolling because they were underprepared because of COVID. So either students are delaying enrollment or they're going to different types of schools before they're coming to us. So we're seeing different types of students coming in at the first year level. And then we're also experiencing drastic drops in international enrollment. That's every institution I've talked to has seen that. The other thing that we're struggling with from a collection perspective is we all know that academics chase the money. So when they're picking out their research areas, they're really quick to adapt to where the grants are. And right now, it's not clear where they're going to be shifting their areas of research. So, we'll see. When I was at Case Western previously, we get a sense of what the trends were and where people were going to start going. So the selectors were able to build up books and journals and databases and the eventually hot areas in preparation. We're not able to do that right now. Either we don't have the flexibility in the budget to do it, or these researchers that have lost funding have yet to decide where they're going to go with it, and they're just sort of waiting back. I have an example in the library, too, where we lost a grant that we were doing with our music library, and it got turned off 2 weeks before a 2-week-long program where we had 50 faculty in music programs from all over the United States coming in. And so the university found that money out of research administration and pre-funded it so it could still happen, but had to shrink it to a week. So that shifted the money from somewhere else. So we're seeing a lot of that this year, where I would expect we're going to see more just cuts next year. And then we have additional political pressure. So in Ohio, we've had some pretty drastic policy changes affecting universities with what's called SB1, where they've changed some of the roles of faculty. They've removed DEI. Faculty are not allowed to strike. They're going to have to, all syllabuses have to be public by next fall. And also faculty have to submit annual reports to the state government going forward of their workloads. So we're seeing there's costs being created through all that new labor. We actually had to go out and, the library did, but the university had to go out and add a software package to now mount syllabuses going forward that we didn't have previously, because syllabuses were just in Canvas. Now we have to have them on a public website. So we're seeing costs from the trickle down from the federal changes to the state changes and out of the institution. So within the library, we're monitoring it in sort of different ways, and some of these are fairly traditional for the library world. So we are monitoring some of the grants and the research output through Web of Science, Scopus, Insight. So for example, I've looked at our grants and stuff for Cincinnati, and because we have not seen major cuts compared to other institutions, but looking through them and talking to other institutions, Cincinnati's research is more traditional. We were not researching in a lot of the areas that have been targeted, where my previous institution, those were the primary research areas. So they've seen a very different situation. So it's really institution to institution. I also recently came across this really good dashboard that the American Association for Advancement of Science puts out, where they're constantly updating what the appropriations are for each of the buckets within science, and it's constantly real time as soon as changes are happening. So you could start seeing where some of the swings of money are happening. In some sense, it's giving us an idea of what we might have to prepare for. So if this is the reality we're going to live in, these are the areas that we're going to have materials available to do research, because this is where our faculty are going to start chasing the money going forward. And I think that's my last slide. Yep. Thank you.
Hello. So we were very pleased to be able to participate in the survey, and one of the reasons that we were so excited is as a university press, we publish primarily in the humanities and social sciences, and those are often not represented in wide scale, or fully represented in wide scale undertakings like this around research and scholarly communications. So we're really happy to have a list of contacts ready to go when Lori called. But my role at the press is to kind of field opportunities like this that fall between books and journals and need some organization-wide facilitation. So just a quick overview about us. We are a department of Duke University. We are self-supporting. We get a very small subvention from the university, which is, I think we pay the university twice as much as the subvention we get. But we are a department of the university, and so we are subject to university budget requirements, mandates, restrictions, things like that. So we are a publisher of books and journals, and we offer digital collections of those books and journals. We publish about 150 front list books every year, and we have about 65 titles in journals right now. And then we also provide hosting services to other nonprofit, mission-driven independent publishers, like a couple of other university presses and societies, as well as a very core piece of the mathematics and stats discipline, Project Euclid. Yeah, so, and as I mentioned, we publish primarily in the humanities, arts, and social sciences. So when we produced our list, we were able to get about 35. We used a list of author contacts, about 3,500, with representation 615 in the humanities and a little over 1,000 in the social sciences. And so when I was thinking about sort of what is our position in this landscape, it made me think about us being in a double bind when it comes to these federal policy changes, because one, we're a publisher, so our authors, editors, and our audience, who are scholars and researchers, all are feeling threatened. And in our disciplines, some are losing funding. But as a department of a research university, as I said, we are subject to what our parent institution is going through as they try to figure out what is happening. And Duke is a major research institute with a lot of dependence on federal funding, as well as has a health system, so with a lot of dependence on Medicaid payments. So there's been, we've been kind of getting it from all sides. So some of the key insights we got from the survey is, funding was a big one. How much funding do you expect to lose? How worried are you about this? And not surprisingly, it turned out that funding is of pretty modest concern to our humanities scholars, and of moderate concern to some disciplines in the social sciences. But the big thing that came through in this survey were expressions of fear about threats to academic freedom and areas that they would be able to publish in, topics that they would be able to publish on. And you can see I hope you can see some of the stats there, with academic freedom being 80% of the arts and humanities respondents expressing concern about it, 65% of the social sciences. And this was just a quote I pulled out. I think some researchers will be hesitant to publish their findings for fear of becoming a government target. That was pretty chilling. So, but another area that we really focused on when we got the survey results, there were questions around what will any funding cuts or this environment broadly do to your conference attendance plans? What will it do to your society memberships? A minority reported that they will need to cut society memberships, but that minority is between 20 and 25%. That's not a small number in the world of especially smaller humanities associations and societies. And in these fields, around half expect it to go to fewer conferences. So how this all sort of came together for us as a university press is, so that was the sort of publishing impacts on our researchers' part. Then as a member of the university, what our parent institution is looking at is, a loss of over $100 million in research funding, the indirect cost reimbursement being slashed, anticipated cuts to Medicaid, as well as federal lawsuits and legal negotiations with the federal government coming our way. So Duke University, to sort of hedge against all this uncertainty, took a number of actions over the spring and summer, including reductions in force, early retirement incentives, hiring freezes, disrupted the whole university budget cycle, and there were some hard caps and mandates on discretionary spending, including what any entities that are able to keep reserves, what they could do with those reserves, or rather, we were strongly encouraged to leave that money in the bank. So that's where we were at our home institution. And, I just want to reiterate that we are a department, and so these university-wide actions and mandates apply to our operations and our staff and our budget, despite the fact that we are self-sustaining. So how all this did come together as we looked at the survey results and also looked at what Duke was asking of us is we saw in lower conference attendance and the need for us to reduce our discretionary spending, that we needed to cut the number of conference exhibits we were going to. That's a major acquisitions channel for our acquiring editors, so that's going to have an impact on our acquisitions. We're doing things to try to minimize that impact, but so from an acquisitions point of view, if we're anticipating lower conferences, that's going to hit us. A large number of the journals that we publish are through society partnerships. So if they're expecting lower conference attendance or possibly people dropping memberships, and another thing that the survey mentioned was researchers reported really wanting more financial and moral support. Like when asked, what do you want from your society? They were like, please, funding to go to the conference or moral support, advocate for us in that. So we, with that, are anticipating higher pressure on us to deliver publishing revenues for these societies if they are going to be losing conference revenues and having increased requests on them to advocate and fund. But that we are also able to kind of share this information and insight with our society partners. So it's also a little bit of a partnership strengthening opportunity for us. And finally, when it comes to sales, these expressions of academic freedom really have us worried about the federal pressure on the curriculum. Essentially, our list is very woke. So to the degree that our print book sales are tied to course adoptions and use in classes, and our ebook sales to libraries might be, if those classes, if they have to put that syllabus public, and that's going to make them subject to undue scrutiny, uncomfortable scrutiny, then are they going to stop teaching our books? And then the even more uncertain library budgets, on top of the always constricting library budgets, we are anticipating lower course adoptions. We are looking to develop new ebook subject collections that are maybe smaller or possibly targeted at somewhat less controversial topics, but are still within our disciplinary range. And also exploring more flexible access models to sort of meet whatever contingencies libraries are facing. So, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm old school with my paper notes. Thank you, Lori, and thank you to the conference organizers and my fellow panelists, and thank you all for being here. As Chief Publishing Officer at ASM, now I have to put on my glasses because I can't see anything. Okay. As Chief Publishing Officer at ASM, I lead our publishing strategy, and over the years, we've successfully launched new journals and transitioned multiple journals to what we hope are sustainable open access models. Our focus more recently is on positioning library partnerships. Partnerships is essential to expanding global research impact. We believe that open access can both be mission aligned and financially sustainable while maintaining the rigorous peer review and editorial excellence that defines scientific publishing. Why can't I advance the slide? Something's happening here.
Okay, let's get rid of that. And then, oops. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So ASM is a global organization with 38,000 members worldwide, publishing 17, going on 18 scientific journals, and bringing over 150 years of excellence to the field of microbiology. We partner with organizations around the world to solve humanity's most pressing challenges, from climate change to antimicrobial resistance, from industrial to basic and applied microbiology. We connect with millions of experts and harness their science to serve humanity. We're leaders in scientific publishing, advocates for open science, and champions of evidence-based public policy. So let's talk a little bit about the survey. The survey painted a concerning picture. 66% of researchers expect to publish fewer papers. There have been over $6.5 billion in funding cuts, and international collaborations are at risk. We are really concerned about that. However, what we're actually observing at ASM tells a little bit of a different story. And we don't know whether this is because it's now and we're waiting for, something to happen in the future. We don't know what's going on. However, we're seeing all-time high submission volumes, actually surpassing our COVID-era peaks. And so we really wanted to dig in to see what's driving this increase. And so here you can see in this graph our submission trends. You can clearly see the COVID bump in 2021 coming down a little bit, and then the orange dot and line are the projected growth in submissions for the end of 2025 and 2026. This chart shows global trends in microbiology research from Dimensions. Looking at publications in the microbiology and medical microbiology categories, we can see growth over the past decade, but the landscape of global microbiology research is fundamentally shifting. We're seeing US publications declining while China and India are accelerating their research output. European output has remained relatively stable and is well positioned to benefit from these changes. The result is a faster shift toward globally distributed research, which reflects the growth of research capacity worldwide. At ASM, we're embracing the shift and ensuring our journals are truly serving the global research community. This chart shows the percentage of our total submissions by country over time. You can see that the percent as a total for US-based submissions has been declining, and China has been growing. We suspect this decrease in US submissions will continue to accelerate. And you might say yes, oops, sorry, that was that slide. You might say yes, that Chinese submissions have increased for everyone, but what's exciting to see is that our acceptance rates from China are also increasing. It's important to note that we're not simply accepting more papers because we're receiving more submissions. We're maintaining editorial excellence while handling increased volume. Sorry, I keep doing that. The quality of the submissions we're seeing from China are also, and India are also improving. So to address this global landscape, we've launched strategic expansion initiatives focused on strengthening our international presence. We've appointed regional representatives to better serve researchers worldwide with dedicated full-time staff now based in China and India who actively engage their local microbiology communities. The impact has been significant. In China, over the past 2 years, our in-country presence has driven a 20% increase in submissions and a 32% increase in acceptances. In India, we've seen a 27% increase in submissions, a 67% increase in acceptances to ASM journals in 2025 alone. ASM member base in India grew to 4,100 members, which is a 30% increase over 2024. We've also diversified our editorial boards to better reflect the global nature of research, adding 7 new associate editors from China and 12 from India in the past year alone. And beyond staffing, we're building strategic partnerships with leading institutions worldwide. Last year, we held our first global research symposium with Tsinghua University. I'm just back from our inaugural scientific symposium in India, partnering with the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. And I'll be heading to our second symposium in Shenzhen in a couple of weeks with the Shenzhen Institutes of Advanced Technology in a couple weeks. So this expansion isn't just about geography, it's about ensuring diverse perspectives and equitable access to publications opportunities for researchers everywhere. But what are we doing for our members, especially those based in the US, who are very much feeling the impacts of the funding cuts? As a member society, we're actively advocating for our members and the broader scientific community. On the legal and policy front, we filed Supreme Court's amicus briefs challenging executive orders that terminated NIH grants for early career scientists. We're urging Congress to reject steep budget cuts to scientific research and public health in the FY 2026 budget. We're opposing executive orders requiring political review of scientific grants, which threaten the independence of research. And regarding federal funding, we're advocating for increased funding for the DOE Office of Science, and we're actively tracking government shutdown threats while pushing for sustained research funding. Our advocacy is continuous and strategic. Beyond public advocacy, we're engaging our grassroots membership through action alerts for congressional outreach and organizing Hill Day visits with staffers. We're collecting member stories about how executive orders are impacting their work to share with Congress. These personal stories are powerful advocacy tools. We maintain the ASM Advocacy Network to keep members informed about policy updates and engagement opportunities. And on the member support side, we offer the Future Leaders Mentorship Fellowship, a 2-year program specifically designed for underrepresented graduate students. We provide 60 fellowships and 200 travel grant awards annually, along with extensive career development resources. And so we're investing strongly in the next generation of microbiologists. So to wrap up, while the landscape does present significant challenges, we are hopeful that our strong submission volumes and proactive strategies are showing resilience and that the continued trust of the global research community. The key message here is that despite uncertainty, science is global and it continues. In the meantime, ASM is committed to supporting researchers through these changes, especially those impacted by funding cuts. We're hoping to not just weather the storm, but trying to strategically build for the future. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you all. That was great. Even though I've been talking with everyone leading up to this, I learned quite a bit from listening to everyone. I hope you did as well. And I'm happy to take questions